Is up, everybody? James Jackson here, back again with another video. If you're new to my channel, I do tips and tricks, news, and reviews for the film and video making industry. So if you do like the content here, please make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that bell so you can stay up to date on all the content going forth. So, very excited about today. Today is my second video on my HDR series. If you watched my video from yesterday, I did an overview of HDR, and basically I'm starting a whole new series because I feel like this is not talked about enough, but yet this whole process is coming, and it's coming a lot sooner than most people seen. I went over why you should look at HDR, even though most of us probably are not, delivering for HDR yet, but you definitely should be considering it. And I talked about why in my video from yesterday. So if you haven't seen my overview video of HDR, I will definitely leave a card up here somewhere, and I will also leave a link to that in the description below. Today we are going to be talking about the acquisition of HDR. Now, I already made this video years back, actually, but it was more of a very fine, specific point because really this is involving the GH5 when it first got HOG, and which really sprung this whole subject of HDR content delivery. And I've, like I said, and pretty much everything I'm going to be talking about here is basically roughly the same, only it's now of a more broader, wider picture of understanding GH5, sorry, HDR acquisition. So if you have seen the video, I'm going to be reiterating a lot of things that I said in that video. If you haven't seen the video and you're interested about setting up HDR specifically for the GH5, definitely check that video out. It's still relevant as it is for today. I'll leave a link for that in the description below as well. But today, like I said, we're going to talk about HDR in a more broader understanding of how to acquire or basically record HDR. And some of the things that we are going to be talking about today is what is needed for HDR acquisition. So what sort of materials do you need? What items do you need? What accessories do you need to get HDR to really make sure you are delivering good quality HDR content? We're going to discuss nit values because nit values are basically the key to any sort of HDR content from acquisition all the way to delivery. So we'll go into more about that. We're going to then talk about the different formats of HDR acquisition, which you probably know, I would say, about at least two of them if you don't know about three of them. You've definitely heard or seen two of them in most of the cameras, and then the third one is in a few of the more recent cameras. So, but we're going to go into those formats later on today, and then finally we're going to talk about how does all of this relate to the Canon EOS R. So, because one of the things about the EOS R that really nobody's talking about is the fact that it has this new HDR format on it, and today I want to sort of get you guys sort of sped up on that. So when you do, if you guys are one of the people that does get the Canon R5 and you want to possibly maybe try out this this HDR format, you will have an understanding and you will know exactly what to do. So with that out of the way, let's get right into it. So what is needed for HDR acquisition? And to be perfectly honest with you, all you need is an HDR monitor. You have a gamma format that is supporting HDR information, and then all you need is just a general understanding of where is this content going to reside. Is it going to be on a platform like YouTube, or is it going to be something more on Netflix, or is this just something that you're going to be streaming on a TV at home, or maybe in the office for a client? These are things that you should know going into the acquisition of HDR. And when I mean acquisition, I mean recording. When you start recording, hitting the record button, these are things you should know about because, especially the last part, because the nit value fluctuates depending on how it's being viewed. So we'll go into more of that, but understand everything else between HDR and SDR acquisition is the same. So basically, recording. You don't need any other special understandings. Just know that as long as you got the gamma, you got an HDR monitor. The HDR monitor is key. As long as you have an HDR monitor that can view your image properly for HDR delivery, and you know sort of where it's going, so you can set the nit value. That's it. That's literally it. It's nothing too crazy. And again, we'll go over all of the nit values and everything else in today's episode. So speaking of nits, let's just go right in and talk about nits. So nits are basically luminance values for TVs and monitors. Basically, how we talk about luminance for cameras, it's basically what nits are for monitors. So basically, there's a certain numeric value to a certain amount of stops and ranges. And with those nits, you can basically, the brighter the image you can go, meaning the brighter the monitor can be, the more your dynamic range can stretch and basically have room to spread, and basically creates more contrast and more vivid colors. So it allows your information to spread out instead of being contained into a more compact file, which is what SDR, because you can only really show up to 8 stops, most likely 5, 6, 7 stops on SDR. You can't really see beyond that on a SDR capable device. With HDR, you can see well beyond that, so it allows your actual image to spread. So which means is, essentially what this means is, the brighter your nit value is, the more light you can shoot to the camera, and you can show the contrast between light and dark. And I will actually pull up a video later to show you guys that. But back to this. So, and this is why I said at the beginning why you need to know what your nit values are. So, because each device has variances on how much nit values they can have. Most smartphones have about 300 to 400 nits. So even the smartphones that are capable of viewing HDR from YouTube, they have really about 300, 400 nits, which, by the way, is good enough. Understand, SDR is 100 nits. So just understand, at 400 nits, you'll have 4 times the brightness value of what SDR was capable at max value. Then you have your average HDR monitors, which give you anywhere between 800 to 1,000 nits. These are like your very consumer monitors, maybe your gaming monitor, like a BenQ. The other one is for your higher end HDR monitors, and these are like your Sony HDR monitors. Your production monitors, like production director monitors, the Sumos from Atomos. Even like the 7-inch monitors from Atomos. These are the ones that are going to be anywhere between 1,000 to 2,000 nits. 1,000 to 1,200 nits value. And then you got your higher end HDR monitors, and those are like tens of thousands of dollar monitors. These are like big Hollywood production style HDR monitors that are really not accessible to the consumer value. So unless you are in that sort of environment, you really shouldn't have to worry about them. Those are around 1,500 nits. Now, if you're looking at me, you're probably saying, wait a minute, the Blackmagic, they have 2,500 nits, and I know all these other products that are super affordable that have these nit values. Correct. But in terms of this content here, I'm talking about what is your viewers going to be watching them on? Are they watching them on their smartphone? Are they watching them on their consumer TVs? Are they watching it from a more higher value TV like a Sony? Not necessarily the monitors that you are using to capture them. It's great to have that range, but you're not going to be seeing all of that, since most people are going to be seeing it anywhere between 400 and 1,000 nits, maybe 1,200 nits, depending on how they're viewing it. But most people are going to watch it in that range. So knowing how much nits, you can then set the value on the monitor, how much percentage of nit value you want to see, so that way you can expose the image to fit that range. So hopefully that was definitely helpful for that. Now let's talk about the HDR acquisition formats. And I would say there's two categories of this. You know the first category, and then there's the second category. So the first category are the what I called this is like an official name. This is just what I call them, the creative HDR formats. And you know these. These are your raw. This is raw. So like Redco RAW, Blackmagic RAW, Canon RAW Lite, Cinema DNG. These and log. So your C log, your V log, S log 3, etc., etc. The reason why I call these the creative HDR formats is because log is in RAW are in their own little platform, and then you need to transform it to be a viewable image in 709. The same process here for HDR. This is for if you're trying to get a very specific look. If you want a specific look and you want to have creative control over how everything look, how your grains look, how your luminance values look, log value, you will start with a log or a raw format and then transform that value in post to a HDR master, similar to an SDR master. So basically the workflow with a raw or a log is pretty much the same. This does not change. When you're in an HDR workflow, this doesn't change at all. The only difference is making sure you know what you're seeing on the monitor. But outside of that, you're recording raw, you're recording log, it's pretty much the same. So the next one is what I call the standard dynamic range formats. And there's two acquisition forms that are currently out right now. One you probably have heard about. It's hybrid log gamma, or HLG. The second one is called PQ. Now, which is called perception quantizer. Now, if you're wondering what in the hell is perception quantizer, I'm not going to try to really go into the nerdy aspect of it. If you really, really are interested, I would actually tell you to check out Engadget's coverage of HDR. They did an amazing video that I personally can't do justice of trying to outdo. So if you're really interested in learning more about perception quantizer or PQ and really want to get into the nitty-gritty of that, check their video out. It's an amazing video, and I will leave that video in the description below. But just to save you guys, for those that may not want to get into the super nerdy technical stuff, it's literally just a picture profile. Like, just picture it as like your standard picture profile in your camera right now. Your normal standard picture profiles, maybe like Vivid or something like that. That's it. Just think of it that way. That it's just basically, in terms of HDR, it's just your standard picture profile, and that uses like a standard gamma curve, similar. And that's pretty much it. Just think of it that way, and if you don't want to get too technical with it, that's literally all it is. Now, HLG is a little bit funkier because it's a mixture of both log, because it's hybrid log gamma. It's a mixture of log and the perceptual quantizer, or PQ. It's a mixture of both. So the highlight, the shadow midtone area of HLG is basically a gamma. It's just a typical gamma curve that you normally see. And then in the highlight region, it's a log profile. Essentially, this was designed by BBC, basically for broadcasters, because one of the problems with PQ is that it's absolute, meaning every single value in the luminance in the image represents a very specific number of nits. So obviously this could be a problem if you're working with different variable HDR displays and you don't have a way to change it. That's why HLG was designed. So when you send HLG, the monitors and the TVs will just basically adjust the highlights based on what is being seen, based on the values that are sort of being seen, and sort of try to map them out to a correct value. Now, now there are some master HDRs that are built around PQ to do the same thing, but I'll get more into that in terms of delivery. All you need to know is that basically with either HLG or PQ, you don't grade these files. So don't try to figure about grading them. They are designed to be delivered as is in terms of their look. RAW and log are different. They are designed to be graded and manipulated, push and pull for it to give you guys a specific look and have you guys give that control over the look. HLG and PQ are just designed, you shoot it, and then you chop it up, you edit it, and you master it out. Right now, I want to show you guys essentially what HDR monitoring looks like. So just to give you guys set up, what I'm about to show you is basically the Pocket Cinema camera recording what is being shown on the Atomos Ninja Inferno, which is an HDR monitor. The reason why I'm doing this is because there's essentially no way I can actually show you correctly, and this is probably the best way I can show it to you. Right now, basically what's happening is I'm sending the signal from the Canon C200. I'm sending C-Log 3 out and basically putting it into the Ninja. And basically, the Ninja is going to take that information and set up an HDR monitoring format. So currently, I have it set up to look at HDR. But if I was to cut this down to 100%, this is essentially what SDR. And the way my lighting is set up right now is this is what, as you can see, everything is blown out. Everything is, everything is muted out. It's overblown. It looks disgusting. But as you will see here, and by the way, this is coming from the C200. This is Canon Log 3, using the Cinema Gamut color space. But if we go down now 400%, this is roughly around where HLG, and as you can see, this already looks so much better. Everything looks more vibrant. And then if we go all the way down to 1628, this is essentially roughly around where PQ is supposed to be at for what the tone mapping is supposed to be for HDR content. So you can see we got a lot of the highlights, almost nothing is clipped at this point, and there's a nice contrast saturation to it. Now, you're not going to get an HDR monitor that's going to be really going this high, so I would probably say around 1131 typically is where you probably want to map your HDR, simply because most TVs you're going to come across that are at least good quality HDR TVs or HDR formats is going to be around 10,000 to 1,200 nits. So this is a rough estimate of where you can sort of see where everything sort of lines up. But as you can see, again, nothing's clipped. Even the lights in the back, they're not clipped. I'm not blown out anymore. And as you can see, my shirt is a lot more vibrant and a lot more colorful than it would typically you see on the vlogs in Rec 709. So hopefully this was helpful. So let's take what we saw from the monitor and sort of put it in a scenario with something like the Canon EOS R5. So as we will do right here, so setting up the Canon EOS R5 for HDR, essentially what we do is we will have the R5, and then we will also have the Ninja V in this case, or some sort of HDR monitor. Like I said, I prefer the Ninja V. It's small, it's compact, and you'll still be able to monitor your look really well. And then basically all you have to do is decide on the camera side what is going to be your format. Are you going to be delivering in either 8K RAW? Will you be choosing C-Log for the non-RAW portion? Or are you going to deliver in HDR PQ, which is basically it's the same thing as PQ as we talked about before. Once you select that one, then you're going to just go into the monitor and basically just make sure that the information that is going to the monitor matches the camera settings. After that, you set your nit value to your delivery value. for either HLG, which is 400%, or PQ, which is anywhere between 1,000, 1,600%. And that's it. That's all it takes to set up HDR for recording. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to leave a like, leave comments below, leave questions. I definitely would love to answer any questions you may have in terms about HDR content, especially on acquisition and overview of HDR. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. Again, thank you guys for watching, and until next time, take care, everyone.